Everyone, my name is Anna Barker, and this is our meeting to discuss books 5 and 6 of Anna Karenina. We are in book 7 right now, but I'll try to offer as little commentary on book 7 as possible. And welcome, everyone. So much happened in books 5 and 6. Those are very, very loaded volumes. And what I keep telling you on during all of my daily or almost daily outpourings, this novel is impossible to read. This novel is impossible to comment on. Every paragraph, every sentence, every word matters. It is such an impeccably constructed novel that we are simply drowning, and it's completely deliberate. So we are coming to the conclusion. We will end sometime this month. So there'll be another Zoom for books 7 and 8. So let's start with the beginning of book 5. And a terrifically loaded chapter at the very beginning of book 5, Levin's confession. Remember, he realizes that he's going to get married, and if it's going to be a church wedding, he has to go to confession. And of all people who could find a priest who could do a quick confession for Levin and get him to be a Christian in good standing, of course, is the godless Stiva. So Stiva to the rescue, as always. Stiva found a man who will confess him. And of course, Stiva knows this man because the Sherbatsky family goes to this parish church, okay? And so the discussion was the priest is very meaningful for Tolstoy because Levin expresses all of Tolstoy's views on religion at the time of the writing of book 5. And so remember, when we'll get to book 8, we will have to talk about Tolstoy's confession because he will be writing his confession simultaneously as he's writing the very end of the novel. And so Tolstoy's views of religion are very, very complicated. Remember, they will get so complicated that eventually the Russian Orthodox Church will excommunicate him. They will not even readmit him into the church at his death. There is still no marker or cross on Tolstoy's grave to this day. And so Tolstoy's God fighting and religion fighting is extreme, to say the least. It's fascinating that he's sort of in the same category of people as someone like Thomas Jefferson, who rewrote the Bible and decided to just, the Jefferson Bible is Jefferson's version of the Bible. Tolstoy's version of the Bible, let's take all the miracles out and just leave the Sermon on the Mount. For Tolstoy, what matters the most was the Sermon on the Mount, and you sort of sense that this way into Christianity, and Watson is here. He needs to know his way into Christianity was. You could see it coming in War and Peace because there's a character in volume 3, just at the beginning of the French invasion, who goes to church, and the sermon is about defeating the enemy and killing the enemy. And this character says, no, let's have more and more French come so that this character could love more and more of them. Then there's another character who fights the French in War and Peace, and he is given the Order of St. George. And he says that I don't understand why is this bravery. My arm faltered. He didn't strike the Frenchman with his saber. And so you can sense that War and Peace is a book where Tolstoy begins to understand this notion of turning the other cheek, of loving thy enemy the way you love your neighbor, of this embracing of humanity that has to transcend absolutely every personal preference that we have in our souls. It's remarkable that Tolstoy will have this incredible need to be this person who loves everyone. And it's amazing that Dostoevsky will be following the same route, but in a very, very different way from Tolstoy. And so Levin goes to confession, and of course he confesses that he has doubt. And the priest, who seems to be, at first such a sweet, almost provincial gentleman, he doesn't talk about theology, he doesn't talk about Christian philosophy. he is giving Levin the simple way out. He's just saying we all have doubts. That is the essence of the human condition. We all doubters, and the only way to disprove our doubt is to just look around. And he just says, look at the world around you. What is it in this world that precludes you from having faith in it? I mean, if you want empirical proof that God exists, you are that proof. And it's such a stunning thing for Levin. It's like all of a sudden it's like, I think I can sign up to this. This is not as hard as I thought it would be. And then the priest says, and look, you're about to contract matrimony with one of my parishioners, a wonderful young lady. And of course, can Levin say no to someone saying that Kitty is a wonderful young lady? No. And I mean, the priest is a genius because he has such a simple and straightforward way into Levin's heart. And he says, well, and of course you'll have children, at which point Levin probably blushed. Levin is such a wonderful blusher. And so then he says, well, you will have to explain the complexities of life to your children. What are you going to say to your children? That you have no idea? That's not going to work. And so, all of us who have kids have been confronted with the need to explain things that we would like to say, I have no idea, but that's not an option because you have to maintain some semblance of authority, as long as your children are in your care. And so Levin confronts that same terrible dilemma, how to get over yourself for the sake of yourself. And that is the most important part of the conversation. How do I overcome my convictions in order to reinforce my convictions? And Tolstoy, that chapter was so important precisely because he expressed his views, but he wanted to make sure that in this chapter, he does not give prevalence to either the priest or Levin. And he had multiple friends read this chapter, and he edited it until he was content that he did not choose one side or the other, that both sides had a chance to express their views, and both sides emerged having learned something from each other. And so, and then the wedding, the whole thing about the shirt, that's so Tolstoy. When Tolstoy was getting married to Sonia Bers, all his clothes were packed away because Sonia, just like Kitty, refused to go abroad for their honeymoon. She sort of sensed that for Tolstoy, Yasnaya Polyana is very, very important. And she just said, look, we're going to the place that matters to you the most. How an 18-year-old young lady was that prescient is beyond me. And it's fascinating. Both Tolstoy and Dostoevsky were blessed with meeting these 18, 19-year-old young ladies who completely understood the essence of the genius that they were connecting themselves with. And so Anna Grigorievna Snitkina was very much the same way. She completely understood what it will be for her personally to be married to Dostoevsky. And she said yes. And Sonia seemingly understood completely what is expected of her to be married to Tolstoy. And so this Kitty's desire to just go to the place that matters to Levin. Tolstoy is resurrecting that beautiful feeling that he had with Sonia of starting a new life at the place that matters to him the most. He was born there, so it was very important to him. When the estate was divided between him and his siblings, he got the homestead, the estate, the part of the inheritance that included the place where he was born. And then, of course, all of their children will be born there, except for the ones that will be born in Moscow, because they had some of the children baptized in the church in Moscow by the time the older children grew to the age where they needed to start universities in Moscow. They bought a house there. But most of the children will be born in Yasnaya Polyana, and that will be the home base. So Tolstoy is at this point resurrecting that feeling that he had for Sonia at the time when they got married, and the wedding scene is masterfully done. I actually mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this on Zoom or in writing, Tolstoy does not do, man on the street kind of stuff. He doesn't do mass scenes of outsiders in his novels. They concentrate very, very profoundly, very deeply on what is happening in the internal world of the characters. He does that to a certain extent. There's a scene in War and Peace where Petya, the youngest Rostov child, goes to Moscow to see the Tsar. But once again, the focus there is everything that is connected to the arrival of the Tsar to Moscow. Dostoevsky does that a lot, like when in Brothers Karamazov, Korinka Krasotkin walks down the street and he sort of banters with people on the street, and it's absolutely hilarious because he's the quintessential Dostoevskian a precocious teenager, and he banters with ladies and he banters with gentlemen, and he's such a smartass. But we have the sense of people on the street, and we finally get that in Tolstoy during the wedding scene, because in addition to the aristocratic core that is present at the wedding, we hear the observations of the peasant women and the city dwellers who happen to sneak into the church and watch this wedding. And so every woman sees herself at that moment at every single wedding, and it's so amazing that all of these ladies, Tolstoy gets commentary from all of these ladies that yes, I remember this moment in my life and how different it is today. And then Dolly's saying, Dolly's observations are just beautiful. She's looking at Kitty, her being her most radiant. She's marrying off her youngest sister, and Dolly's love is just overwhelming for the sweet little sister of hers. But at the same time, Dolly says, yes, I was here once, and how different it is now. But then at the same time, Dolly says, I wouldn't change anything. And just beautiful, beautiful. And then ladies gossiping who will step on the rug first, because whoever steps on the rug first will rule the family. And just the beauty of this incredibly elaborate Russian wedding ceremony, where the bride and the groom have crowns placed upon their heads by their assistants. And these crowns, it's fascinating that in Russian, church wedding is called vinchania, and coronation of a czar is called vinchania na tsarstvo. So it's the same word when you are crowned to be a czar, and when you are entering matrimony, it's the same word in Russian. It's just vignettes is the crown that is placed upon your head. So the bride and the groom are being crowned into a marriage that is as undissolvable as a ruler's service to Russia. Absolutely stunning. And then, of course, they arrive to the countryside, and all of this chapter is dedicated to their young love are hilarious because we are constantly reminded that they can't keep their hands off each other. And it's just so sweet. You remember every once in a while they are, and he's writing, she's knitting. He doesn't understand what she's doing. She doesn't understand quite what he's doing. He must be writing a book, which means it must be important. It's sort of an echo to something that happens in War and Peace, where one of the characters is saying that she just doesn't understand how her husband can be this very important person needed by everyone. So, Kitty looking at Levin writing this book, and just like he's writing it, it must be important. It's amazing to what extent Virginia Woolf will resurrect the scene in her To the Lighthouse, where Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay are sitting together, and there is this sense of quietude. And he is doing his thing. He's a professor, and she's doing her thing. She is the mother of 6 children. And they're both sort of having, they've been married for so long, but they still have the sense that, well, he's doing his thing, and God knows what it is, and she's doing her thing, and obviously she doesn't understand the thing that I am doing because she's a woman. And so it's amazing to what extent Virginia Woolf, who worshipped Tolstoy, will resurrect the scene of Tolstoy and Levin just sort of trying to assess each other without understanding each other, and just leaving it at that. But then every once in a while, he approaches her, she approaches him, and then a servant comes and they just jump away from each other like singed cats. Sparkles fly all through that. No wonder that Kitty's pregnant right away. And then, of course, as soon as Kitty gets pregnant, then all the women need to help her, right? I felt so terrible for poor Kitty. I mean, here she is dealing with new marriage, running a house for the first time, dealing with Levin's nanny, who, do you remember that nanny? I mean, I just adore her. She kept sitting and, listening to Levin's thoughts on philosophy. She loved philosophy most, right? And then every once in a while would say, you know what, you just have to get married. And Tolstoy would tell us that was not a sort of just a statement she made. It was well thought out and well placed statement. And so that same nanny who just sort of felt like a man of your age should not be alone. I mean, you need someone beside your childhood nanny to keep you company. That same nanny is all of a sudden now just feeling like, okay, well, I can't be the reason why the two of them argue, and yet how can I live with all of these new rules? These new rules are just unbearable. And so then, of course, all the ladies descend on the Levin estate to help Kitty, right? So there's Mother there. There is Dolly there with all of her children and the governess. And then, of course, Varinka comes. Can you imagine being like 4 or 5 months pregnant with all of your female relatives coming to stay with you to help you, where all you want is just peace and quiet and intimacy with your husband? It's impossible. And I love how Levin all of a sudden started like, I have to go to the office. I have to work. I can't take it anymore. That's when I commented that Levin sort of assumes this attitude of Piglet in Winnie the Pooh, because Piglet is always like, okay, I have to do something that I didn't finish yesterday and it can't wait till tomorrow. And that kind of attitude of Levin, it's just, he always needs to run to the office because there's something in that office that has to be magically done. There are no men there at all. His brother is there, but his brother Kuznetsov is hopeless because all he does is talk. And so then we need to have the arrival of Stiva and Vasenka Vyshlovsky, right? And before that happens, let's talk about the jam making. It's a very important scene. I laugh so hard every time I think of jam making. I mean, like the women arguing about whether to add water or not to add water, because the nanny was caught adding water to the jam making process, right? And so it was just, she was dismissed from her jam making duty by the new Sherbatsky clan because she was doing everything all wrong. It's comedic genius. It's complete comedic genius. And so this jam making is one thing that Kitty has to deal with, because she doesn't want to make an enemy of Levin's nanny, who ran the entire household for decades, but at the same time she has to be a Sherbatsky. And so what to do, right? And so then Kitty cooks up this courtship, or this matrimonial scheme between Kuznetsov and Varinka. And we find out a little bit about Kuznetsov. He is Levin's brother from a different father, so Levin's half brother. So Nikolai was his brother and we have to talk about Nikolai. I forgot. We have to talk about Nikolai, but Nikolai is his brother from the same father, and Kuznetsov is his half brother. And so Kitty cooks up this lovely wedding possibility between Kuznetsov and Varinka. The mushroom picking scene is just absolute delight. I am so thrilled that so many of you loved it, because you can just see, Varinka tying her little kerchief with the little kerchief ties under her chin, and she's all sweetness. And we find out something about Kuznetsov. He had a love. When he was a very young man, and she died. And it's fascinating that there's a character in Fathers and Sons of Turgenev, Pavel Kirsanov, who has the same kind of love that he just can't let go of. And, his brother has moved on from a love that he lost, and Pavel Kirsanov just can't. And so Kuznetsov is very much, though, that same Russian character who just can't let go. And they go mushroom picking, and he says something and she says something, and then it's over. And it's over. And it's like, and that's how life is. I always, my students just say to me, that's just so stupid. They should just get married, But he's so rational about why he wants to marry Varenka, right? He says, look, she's poor and she'll always be grateful to me that I saved her from herself. Like that's no way to enter marriage, right? And also she's all alone in this world. She's an orphan, and she's not going to drag her entire family into my life the way Kitty dragged her entire family into Levin's life. Look at how he's suffering. And so, do you remember, those of you who read War and Peace with me, do you remember that moment in War and Peace where one character is saying to another character, don't overthink it. In Russian, it's не mudri. Like, don't overcomplicate this thinking thing. And Kuznetsov overcomplicates the thinking thing. The same way the character in War and Peace overcomplicates this getting married thinking. And it doesn't happen. And it's a bittersweet sensation because Varenka is almost relieved. Can you imagine being married to a bachelor intellectual who always thinks? It would have been so hard. But at the same time, it's very bittersweet. And I forgot to mention Nikolai. It's amazing to what extent Levin and Kitty grow to understand each other through that death scene. And it's fascinating that Tolstoy does not give chapter names in any of his books. I think there's only one chapter title in all of his writing, which is astonishing. And that's the chapter entitled Death. And it's amazing that our characters are having their little idyll, and they can't keep their eyes or hands off each other. And into this comes death. And Levin gets this letter from his brother's companion saying it's really bad. And Levin says, okay, I have to go. My brother is dying. And Kitty says, I will go with you. I'm a part of your life. And Levin is furious because he feels that Kitty wants to come because, she won't be entertained. She'll be bored without him. And Kitty pretty much has a temper tantrum and she says, I'm coming. Levin is horrified. And, of course, when he arrives to this provincial town and it's a lousy hotel and his brother occupies the lousiest of rooms and he doesn't want Kitty to meet a prostitute because he feels that Kitty is so pure and sweet. And remember, Levin, has had dealings with prostitutes. I mean, like the way Tolstoy and, all of his brothers have gone to the brothel. So Levin knows what kind of woman this is, and he can't imagine Kitty actually meeting this woman. But remember, just like Tolstoy, Levin gave Kitty his diary that describes all of his sexual encounters from the past. But Kitty meets this woman in the corridor, and Levin is horrified that this is happening in public in the corridor. But then, Kitty, of course, does what she learned from her mother and what she learned from her sisters. And she does what women used to do all the time in every single family. Women took care of birth and women took care of death. And that women stood on the two ends of life. And it's amazing how Tolstoy in War and Peace, there's a birth in War and Peace too, and there are, of course, several deaths in War and Peace, but it's fascinating how Tolstoy always says, when we are approaching the moment of birth in War and Peace, it says life was being accomplished. And then when we were approaching the moment of death in War and Peace, Tolstoy would say death was being accomplished. There's this passive nature to this. We don't choose to be born. There is no act of our own volition in our coming into being. It was somebody else's will who brought us here. And we have no act of volition in departing, unless, of course, we choose to, and that's quite unfortunate. But the entry into this life and exit out of this life does not involve our free will. And Tolstoy is very, very aware and attuned to this in War and Peace and in Anna Karenina. And so death has to accomplish its thing with Nikolai. And this process of dying is devastating. And Levin can't handle it. He just can't handle it. He sees this emaciated, bony body of his brother. And this is the brother who's the older brother. Can you imagine? I'm an only child. So for me, reading Anna Karenina is always so devastating because I always feel like this is the one novel that makes me feel that I failed to procure siblings and that is my fault. But it's a novel about relationships between grown siblings. Just think Dolly and Kitty and Anna and Stiva and Levin and Nikolai. Konstantin Levin, of course, and Nikolai, these relationships between grown siblings are so beautiful to me, are so incredibly complex. They are so hard and so harsh, and yet it's undissolvable. You have your siblings for life, whether you love them or hate them, whether you can get along with them or not, it's forever. And so this brother he was so easy to love when he was a child, and he was so saintly, and then something snapped, and then that literally hell broke loose. And we all know those people who just all of a sudden turned from being sweet and lovely to all of a sudden just saying to hell with that, it's not worth it. And so then it becomes impossible to love them, and yet we must. And so Levin is saying goodbye to his ideal from his childhood, but at the same time, he is saying goodbye to this brother who's gone, who's no longer there. And for him, it's impossible. But Kitty is a woman, and a woman takes care of both ends of life. And for her, it's completely natural. That's what she learned from her mother. That's what Dolly does. That's what all women do. And Kitty has sort of this, archetypal knowledge of all women as to how to deal with end of life. And it means providing comfort. It means providing love, acceptance, cleanliness. She makes sure that he gets a better room, that everything in the room is clean, sheets are clean, his bedclothes are clean. And a beautiful thing happens from sort of this, English sounding Kitty. She becomes Katya. And this transformation of Kitty into Katya is so meaningful, because Nikolai says to Levin, you know what, I like your Katya. She's okay. And Kitty was this beautiful, intuitive, feminine understanding, says, oh, we met before, but I'm just so sorry we didn't get a chance to create a closer acquaintance. I mean, he remembers the moment when he saw he was behaving like a total jerk at that spa in Germany where Kitty was staying. He created a public row, and it was extremely embarrassing for him. But Kitty does not bring that up. This man is dying. This is not the time to remind him of how awful he is. She says, "Oh, I'm so sorry we didn't get a chance to be acquainted closer at the time when we met." Oh, stunning. And so Levin can't handle it. Levin just can't, because he remembers the boy who was his ideal in childhood. And it's all over, and it's devastating for all of them. And then, of course, was the genius that only Tolstoy can handle. At the end of that chapter entitled Death, we find out that the doctor's suspicions were confirmed that Kitty was pregnant. And so that chapter is just, it just takes so much out of you. And so then, of course, after that chapter comes the jam making and the mushroom picking and all of the mess, and Levin going to the office all the time, because all of a sudden he discovers that he has to do something in the office. And he is thrilled when he realizes that somebody is coming to visit. But it's not the old prince. He would have loved to have the old prince come. Old Prince Sherbatsky is such a common sense character. He just, what's on his mind, he says it like it is. And remember when Kitty was forced to go through all of those medical examinations that were so embarrassing to her, Prince Sherbatsky was furious with his wife, and she said, she does not need doctors and a spa. That girl needs a husband. It's that Levin misses in his life, just male companionship that is straightforward. And you can get that straightforward male companionship from Stiva with all of his faults. Tolstoy creates like the perfect imperfect character in Stiva. We can't stand him because we love Dolly so much, and we know how much he's hurting Dolly, but he still makes Stiva this absolutely charming, affable character. And we can't take it anymore, and yet there he is. But he doesn't come alone. He comes with a high society fop who has thick thighs. That's like so important for Tolstoy, because thick thighs would be fantastic if you're doing agricultural work. Like brute physical strength is needed for plowing and mowing and harvesting and all of the stuff that you need to do on the fields. Brute physical force is not necessary to do drinking and gambling and whoring. And so that is the thing that Tolstoy holds against the likes of Vasinka Vishlovsky. They're useless. They're completely, useless human beings. And so Tolstoy, I told you this in my commentary, that Tolstoy will have the same comment about the prospective son-in-law in the death of Ivan Ilyich. We hardly need that character at all. The one thing that we remember about that character, that he had good thighs. And so it's, they're not necessary. And so Vasinka Vishlovsky has a Scottish cap with ribbons, which makes him look super dashing. And, they're off to hunt, and Stiva is saying to Vasinka, this Levin is completely under the heel of his wife. I mean, this is no way for a man to be. Do you remember when Kuznetsov organizes a bachelor party for Levin just before he gets married? And his buddies are telling him, hey, we can go bear hunting. Like, forget about this. We can just jump on the next train and we'll be bear hunting in no time. And then one of the guests says, well, when you get married, you'll just say, I want to go hunting, and your wife won't let you. And Levin at that point has this thought like, oh, there'll be someone in my life who will control my worst impulses. I mean, for Levin, he's waiting for something to be in his life that would just say no to him. I mean, and that's so Tolstoy. Tolstoy could not control his impulses in his teens and 20s. So the fact that he got married and like this settled life of comfort and purpose saved him from himself. The only reason we have War and Peace and Anna Karenina is that Tolstoy was settled enough to, to control his worst impulses, right? So Levin is thrilled that there'll be someone to control his worst impulses. But Stiva says, he's just, this is no way to have a marriage. This is the wrong way to do it. And so they go hunting, and the hunting scene, I'm a non-hunter. Like, this novel is just so not Anna, right? I have no siblings. I don't hunt. And it's a masterpiece. It's just a complete masterpiece, because Stiva is so much better at everything here. Like his foppish outfit. Vasinka Vishlovsky thought that to go hunting, you have to have everything brand new. And Stiva is like the quintessence of a hunter. Everything is like thoroughly worn out, like a rakish, worn out hat. You can just see him. I mean, he is a masterpiece at the hunting field, but his gun is perfection. So, boots, clothes, hat, just, double bake hair, but the gun is perfection. And so he starts hunting, and like Levin is just deflating like a balloon. I mean, he's just plop. He can't take it. And Laska is looking at Levin and saying like, what's wrong with you? I mean, my favorite character, remember Laska? And I love the fact that one of the readers said, we understand now that Anna's propensity to love Laska does not just come from the fact that she is a impassioned dog owner, but Laska is a character in her own right. And she is. And she's just looking at Levin at this point and saying, what's wrong with you? Like, look at you. You like, your timing is off. Everything is off. And Levin is frustrated. And so he goes to sleep, and Stiva and Vasinka are like, sleep? Are you kidding me? There are peasant women out there that, require our handling. And Levin is just beyond furious. And so, and Vasinka and Stiva can sing, and they sing into the night with the peasant girls. And then he's trying to wake them up in the morning, and they're obviously nowhere to be found. They're sound asleep. And so that's when Levin regains his position. Remember, Levin did not go carousing with peasant girls, which means that he preserved his like moral core. Moral core for Tolstoy means this equilibrium in your life. And this equilibrium brings about this like calm attitude towards success. Once you settle everything in your personal life, then everything else in your life will settle too, because this personal calm will result in success in everything. And so he goes off, and Laska is thrilled, and shooting goes splendidly. He brings back all of these birds, And, this should be like a complete triumph of Levin. He's married to a cute girl, she's pregnant, and he shot more birds than these other buddies. Like this is male success on steroids. And what does he find? That these two idiots have eaten everything. Like there was enough food to feed them for a week, and they've eaten absolutely everything. And so you can see Levin deflating again, but he can't stay angry with them for too long. And, finally his birds are cooked and, they eat something. Then he comes back and this guy, Vasinka, keeps like being sweet with Kitty. And they talk about, society stuff. I mean, you have to understand that this is the kind of conversation that Kitty had every single day of her teenage life, right? Ever since she started coming out into society, which would have been probably, 15, 16, in public settings, she could talk to any man as long as she was always supervised, right? So she's doing exactly what she used to do just, 10 months ago, a year ago. But Levin is furious. Levin is about as jealous a dude as jealous can be. Remember, he is guarding the sun. Nobody's abducting the sun from his patronage, right? And so he actually goes to Dolly and says, look, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And Dolly says, yeah, Steve and I talked about it too. And, Vasinka is just a little, I love the fact that Levin doesn't just shoot off the hip. Levin doesn't just fly into this like mad rage. He consults Dolly. And Dolly confirms that, Vasinka is a bit much. And I love the moment when Levin enters Vasinka's bedroom. So it's like, it's time for you to go, dude. Why? I'm expecting company. And then he's breaking a stick while he's talking to Vasinka. Like the brutality of Levin is just like, you can just hear the snap, snap, snap. And then he says, nah, I'm lying. I'm not expecting anywhere. I just want you to go, snap. And Vasinka is like, okay. So because Vasinka saw Levin exercising the day before, the same day, and he saw those muscles. Yep. And he's like, okay, I think it's time to go. And so Vasinka departs. And the fact is, there's no carriage to give him. So he departs on like a cart, little carriage, but there's no seat on the carriage. So he departs on a bed of hay with his little Scottish ribbons flying. And that is the non-dual duel of the novel. So this novel does not contain a duel like War and Peace, but this is the non-dual duel. Well, Vasinka knew that if he doesn't go, he's going to be dead. Even if they don't duel like gentlemen, that Levin is just absolutely going to pummel him, beat him to death, because he dared to look at his woman. And that's when I said that, do you remember how different the scene is from Anna and Karenin coming back from the races, where Anna says to Karenin, Alexei Vronsky is my lover. And Karenin says, well, we must maintain appearances. I'm going to stand by you, but we're going to observe all the rules of society in such cases, instead of saying to Anna, no, you are my woman. I'm just going to tell that society fob to stay away from my woman. Karenina never says that. Anna never knows that she's loved by her husband, where Kitty is loved almost to a fault by her husband. The old princess is terrified, absolutely terrified, because she is realizing that her daughter is married to a caveman. Her daughter is married to like an absolute bear. Those bears that Levin likes to hunt. He has turned into one. He's just so possessive of Kitty. It's like paleo love. She's my woman. I dragged her into my cave, and she belongs to me. And the princess is horrified because that's not done in society. But Dolly is the best. She says, and I love the fact that Tolstoy very aptly says, Dolly inherited her father's gift for telling tales. And so she regales them in the evening by this tale that she went upstairs to get herself, hussied up, prettied up for Vasinka. And she was putting on new ribbons. And then all of a sudden, she looked outside the window, and there he was on the straw with his, Scottish cap ribbons flying in the wind. And she told that story several times because everybody just thought that was just so masterful. She was adding ribbons to complement his ribbons to attract him, and he was off. So there you have it. All is well. Vasinka is gone. The marriage didn't happen. The mushroom picking didn't work out. Jam succeeded in being made. But we also have, we are forgetting Anna, right? And oh my God, there's so much stuff happening in this chapter. We need to talk about art. So let's combine 5 and 6 and the story of the portrait of Anna and the painting of Christ was the opera scene. So from my commentary from the past 2 days, Tolstoy's view of art is just so incredibly complex. And so, Vronsky is sort of a man in search of purpose in life. He chose Anna, he chose this love, but he's a young man in his 20s and ambition is raging in him. He has given up everything for her, but is Anna enough? And Anna is trying to be enough. And she encourages all of his obsessions so that he would not feel that she is that burden that has prevented him from accomplishing something in life. And so in Italy, that obsession becomes painting. And they cannot meet everyone. Women of high society cannot meet Anna. Remember what Vronsky's sister-in-law says. She's like that sweetheart, the December's daughter who had no dowry. And Vronsky was willing to give all of the proceeds from their father's inheritance to his brother to maintain his life because his sister-in-law had no money at all. And she's the angel who came when he shoots himself. And she's the one, he says to her, just let everyone know it was an accident. I was cleaning a gun. And she says, well, I hope you don't do any more gun cleaning. And she stays with him all the way to the end. Women give birth, women take care of death, and women take care of the sick and wounded. And so his sister-in-law is there, but his sister-in-law says, look, I can't let Anna into my life. I can't rehabilitate Anna. I have daughters. I will have to take those daughters into society. I will have to marry those daughters. Well, I cannot, for my daughter's sake, have an association with a woman who is living with you out of wedlock. So even that saintly sister-in-law, for whom he sacrificed so much, who nursed him after his suicide attempt, cannot accept Anna. And so in Italy, they make do with, people that are willing to be with them. And they go to see the painter. And the painter has lots of paintings for sale. He's thrilled to see wealthy Russians, which means there'll be money. And the painting that he has worked on for many years, that painting of Pontius Pilate asking Christ, what is truth? What is the meaning of it all? That painting that is so meaningful to him personally, that is the painting that is meaningful for Tolstoy, right? Tolstoy is the person who would have loved to paint the painting of the conversation between Pontius Pilate and Christ about what is it that you want? What are you advocating for, Christ? What is your purpose in this? Why are you agitating all of us so? Why are you defying civil authority? For what purpose? What is your meaning in this world? And remember, Tolstoy will start agitating civil authority. He will call people for civic disobedience. He will be supporting people who are conscientious objectors to the point where he will write an entire novel, the proceeds of which will go towards the repatriation of Russian conscientious objectors called the Dukhobors to Canada. There's a statue to Tolstoy in Saskatchewan in sign of gratitude for him helping these peace activists to move to a place where they would not be sent to war. So Tolstoy, in this painting, he is already embedding his ideas of civic disobedience. It's stunning. This is the painting of Tolstoy's thoughts about what it means to be a good human being, where you can be on the side of Pontius Pilate and civil authority. That is the importance of that painting. And of course, Vronsky is a dilettante, capital D. He sees a painting of boys fishing, and that's the painting that he likes because it's easy to understand. Do we want to know the truth? Are we willing to do what it takes to get to the truth? Are we willing to take the truth despite the fact that it might not be palatable to us? No, we want boys fishing. And so Vronsky, being human, wants boys fishing. And the painter sees them depart, and he sees through them. I mean, artists are prescient in that sense. They're awful human beings because they can see through us and we hate them for it. But the painter can see through this couple. He's still willing to paint Anna. He's stunned by her beauty. All men are stunned by her beauty. She is mesmerizingly beautiful. There's something almost unhumanly beautiful about her. But he does not join them for dinner. He does not want to keep their company because he sees through them. And the truth that he sees about them, that these are shallow human beings. They are. They're not seeking the truth. Oh, that is so harsh, so incredibly harsh. It's fascinating that as soon as he's done with his portrait of Anna, and that's the portrait that Levin sees in part 7, and he's stunned by that portrait, that as soon as he finishes portrait of Anna, Vronsky stops painting his own portrait of Anna. Because he sees in this portrait of Anna something that he himself has not noticed in Anna, but the artist saw in Anna. And this is Tolstoy's statement about art. This is not a good thing. When someone who lives with you cannot see in you that which art can see in you, it's eerie. That is the whole point of Tolstoy's future novella called The Kreutzer Sonata, which is probably the most devastating thing he has ever written. There is a husband there who, the marriage is complicated. They had children and it's falling apart at this point. And the wife starts having more time on her hands. The wife practices birth control, just like Anna. There are no more babies. She becomes beautiful. She becomes not burdened with care. She starts taking music lessons. And in the Kreutzer Sonata, the wife performs Beethoven's sonata for violin and piano called the Kreutzer Sonata in front of a family gathering. And the husband is horrified because he sees in her, during the performance of Beethoven, something that he never noticed in her. So do you see how Tolstoy will carry this idea of art bringing something out of us that people who live with us don't see in us? And it's at the same time the most amazing thing about art because it transcends us, and the most horrible thing about art, because Tolstoy says in the Kreutzer Sonata that art makes us feel what we would not feel under ordinary circumstances. Art makes us think we can do things that we would not be able to do under ordinary circumstances. So we who love to read books and love to go to concerts and love to go to opera, yay. I mean, Anna is like all for art, would think that it's amazing that art helps us transcend, but Tolstoy warns us how dangerous it is because that's not us. It's an elevated, stunning us that is not us. And we can be lost in that in-between gap. That is the in-between gap where Madame Bovary gets lost. I mean, Emma Bovary blurs the margin between her reality and the novels that she reads, and it becomes her undoing. And it's remarkable to what extent that notion of life imitating art or art imitating life is still with us today. Like violence in movies begets violence in actual reality. How do we rate movies? What is rated R? And the constantly changing rules for that. And it's amazing to what extent that argument has been with us since the ancient times. And that's why I quoted St. Augustine extensively, because he said that when he was a young man, he was living in a cauldron of lust, which was Carthage, North Africa. And he went to the theater, and he says to us, I went to the theater and I saw horrible things happen on stage, but we applaud when these horrible things that happen on stage are done well, and we're disgusted when they're not done well, but we don't want those things done onto us in real life. I mean, just think of any Shakespeare tragedy. Do you want any of that to happen to you or to your family members? Never. Absolutely never. But we would not want to see a terrible rendition of Hamlet or Macbeth. We want blood. We want poisonings and stabbings done well. And St. Augustine warns us against that, because he says we destroy ourselves in the process. We blur that margin, and nowhere else does Tolstoy blur that margin more than in the opera scene. And so here we come to probably the highest lowest point of the whole novel, where this notion of human being versus art, for Tolstoy, that is so paramount for Tolstoy, is explored to its fullest potential. In the painting of Christ, it's absolutely there. But Anna, who creates a little court around herself, she wants to make everything relevant for Vronsky. She wants to make sure that Vronsky doesn't feel that she is a stone that is hanging around his neck, that she is not burdening him, that he has interest. So, he plays the country squire to a fault. I mean, all of those elections that happen in the provincial town, I wrote about them to the best of my ability, but even Anna had too much of provincial elections. I could not take it anymore provincial. I could not take any more provincial elections after a while. So I still owe you some commentary on that. At some point, I will finish that comment. It's hilarious, I mean, of course, what's his name? Steva. Somebody mentioned drunk dialing. He does drunk telegraphing. Yes. So Dolly receives that telegraph, and she thinks like, well, he was so drunk that he was willing to spend, what was it, 2 rubles to send this. I love the message that he sends to her. That telegraph says, so and so won, spread good news. It's so inconsequential for Dolly who won this provincial election. But I mean, Steva is just inimitable. He is a genius character. Spread good news. So anyway, and Vronsky understands that he is a mover and shaker. He's needed. People want his support. He can give a fabulous meal. He's a young man with ambitions. You can't take that away from him. That is, it's an impossibility. And so Anne realizes that she needs to keep him, and the only way to keep him, I mean, he wants to get into politics. Did you notice that? He said, in 5 years, and when we are married, right? And she gets the hint, and she says, okay, let's do this. Divorce, we'll have to settle Serozha somehow. But she's willing to go through the whole thing in order to keep him, because she understands that his ambition is not consistent with him keeping her as this undetermined person in his life. And that's the conversation with Dolly about wanting to have children, wanting to have his last name in case he has a son. Like Annie is indeterminate, but a boy will have to have his name, not the Karenin name. And the whole Dolly visit, we can talk about it for hours, which, we're running out of time already. I mean, Dolly was her poor little clothes and poor little dusty face and poor little carriage. And she sees this opulence, all of those beautiful English toys. But Anna doesn't even know how many teeth her baby has, just all of these little things. Do you remember Dolly talking to peasant women about pregnancies, deliveries, nursing, illnesses? I mean, Dolly and peasant women, they are a good match. The woman that she talks to just before she visits Anna, who's grateful that her baby died, that is just a little jarring for Dolly. And then Dolly says to herself, yes, but those are her thoughts too. I mean, Dolly is just such a complex character. And then when she actually encounters Anna, who says to her, no, I'm not going to have any more children. This is what he loves. I'm not going to make myself stupid and ugly, because this is the only thing that is keeping him with me. That's when Dolly is just terrified. I mean, Dolly says how simple it would be to not have any more children. But if this is the price you have to pay, that you have to have no soul, then it's not a price that Dolly is willing to pay. Devastating conversation, absolutely devastating. And so Anna feels that, she has to stay beautiful. She has to have no more children. She has to get a divorce. Like boom, 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 in order to keep Vronsky. They go to the city. Vronsky tells her not to go outside the house, and she goes to the opera, which is the falsest place on earth. And this comes from a person who goes to the opera and goes to lots and lots and lots of concerts. But, what do we do at concerts? We go there to see NBC. It's not so much about Beethoven and Tchaikovsky and Mozart. It's everything that happens in the theater. If we would just want Mozart and Beethoven and Tchaikovsky, we would stay home and listen in the privacy of our room. But we go outside of our room to hear this. And, recording was not available in the 19th century. So, this ability to consume music, you had to come to music, or you had to have music come to you. You could host events at your house. You could go to the public space. It's amazing how the 19th century becomes the century of the proliferation of public spaces for the consumption of art, right? Why? Because there's a growing middle class, because people are wealthier, because people, remember in the 18th century, paintings are collected by aristocrats for their own private collections. Operas and concerts happen in aristocrats' homes, where the ordinary citizen is not allowed. The 19th century creates the operatic space, the concert space, where the commoner can mingle with the aristocrat. It's the same with public museums, public lectures, public music spaces. The 19th century becomes sort of this melting pot of cultural consumption. And into this melting pot of cultural consumption, where everyone is seen and everyone sees, enters Anna with her truthful desire to wear her relationship on her sleeve. She wants to be accepted in the world as the woman who is in love and is willing to make her love public. And you don't do that in the theater. In the theater, you go to consume lies, and you consume spectacular lies. And the more spectacular the lies, the more you love it. Welcome to reevaluation of everything that St. Augustine said about art, right? So we entered the theater to see lies done well. And Anna enters with the assumption that her truth will be accepted in this place of lies. And that's an impossibility. And that's why I posted all of those 5 Impressionist paintings for you by Mary Cassatt, and I think there was Monet. I don't remember, but there were 5 paintings that showed people not necessarily watching the production on the stage, but watching each other. And there are actual paintings there of people, like there's a woman looking at the stage through her opera glasses, and the man on the balcony opposite of her looking at her through his opera glasses. In a public space, we observe everyone else. And so this cross current of gazes, so much has been written about this. Tolstoy sends Anna into the cross current of gazes, and the woman who is sitting next to her in the box next to her, whose husband dared to say hello to Anna, is incensed that her husband is talking to an immoral woman. It shouldn't matter, because everyone should have come to see the opera. But obviously, people don't go to the opera to see the opera. They go to see people who see the opera. And so this whole interaction was this woman who, somebody says, oh, she was just a foolish woman who wanted to pick a fight. And her husband said hello, and it was really a no big deal, but it was a big deal, because that was the big rejection of Anna by the entire world. And this rejection is just completely devastating. Devastating for Anna, because she cannot exist in a vacuum. She thought that Vronsky's love will be enough, but even someone like Betsy Tverskaya, who had a almost public affair with Tushkevich, she comes to say Dolly, and she says, ta-da, see you after you obtain your divorce. So the truthful Anna, the Anna who wants to live a truth, cannot live a truth in a world where she needs to play by a script, and she does not want to play by a script. And that is the greatest tragedy of Anna, the character, and Anna Karenina, the novel. It's a novel about truth seekers. And we have two terrific truth seekers in this novel. Anna, who wants to live a truthful life and not a lie, and Evan, who's a truth seeker. And we are at the point of the novel now with the only time when the two narratives intersect. And what an explosive set of chapters. So I think that's it. Wow, 1 hour, exactly 1 hour. Let me look at my notes. Jam, hunting, Vasinka, Anna at the opera. We're done. So we covered all of the most important points, and my literary companion here finally settled down. He was pretty restless for a while, especially during the explanation of religion. He was like, I don't know. I don't know. I find all of these thoughts exceedingly unsettling. I need to settle in. Oh, he's just completely sound asleep right now. Any questions? Yes. I've never understood why, given Anna's beauty charm. Okay, let me get to this question. She would have married Karenina in the first place. There was no one else to marry her. That's that, that's the complexity of 19th century life. Remember, I posted that painting for you, the Unequal Marriage by Pukirev, of a young woman who is very, very young, marrying a very, very old man. And she's very, very beautiful. And Pukirev paints himself as the condemnation of society. The young man with the beautiful beard, glaring with anger at the husband. And my question is always like, why didn't Pukirev marry this beautiful girl? There's an amazing Chekhov novella based at the Hunt, Na Охоте, about the gamekeeper's daughter named Olenka. And all the men in the novella are in love with her. She is young. She's so beautiful. She's just stunning, but the old widower marries her because he can afford it. And Karenin had risen to his position in society the hard way. Remember, an uncle raised him and his brother. His brother went into the diplomatic service. Karenin hardly ever saw him. He lived abroad. And Karenin didn't become Karenin, for no reason at all. Everything in his life was very hard. There was no family. There was no love. There was no hearth by which he could warm himself. He's such a Dickinsonian character in this novel. It's fascinating how we are sort of slipping into the English novel every once in a while here. Like that whole set of chapters where Levin has to go visiting and he doesn't know how to do a social visit. It's excruciating, but it's like a Jane Austen novel consists of these awkward social visits. So obviously Karenin understands the complexities of an English social novel. And Karenin is such a Dickinsonian character. We understand him and we refuse to understand him. Karenin's life was very, very hard. And it's fascinating that Anna was living with an aunt who was willing to just sort of chaperone her. Stiva made his way somehow into the world. Remember, every time we meet Stiva, we're reminded that everyone in society is either his acquaintance, relative, or patron, right? And so Stiva had the knack, like the social knack, to make himself agreeable to everyone at all times. And so he somehow managed to place himself into a position in society where he belongs, even though he had absolutely no money. But Anna had to marry someone, and she was living in the provinces. And this Karenin came over a few times. And the woman who was Anna's chaperone, society chaperone, the aunt, she actually put Karenin into a position where he could not propose because he would have been a scoundrel. He has visited enough times that in polite society, that was considered like impolite to not, propose. And so it was a dreadful marriage, absolutely dreadful. It was like not shotgun wedding, but, the Russian 19th century aristocratic version of that. He was put into a position where he could not propose. Yeah, Anna had no other options. Let me see, there was another question here. Let me read it. What was it about Anna that the painter showed in the portrait? Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? What is it? What is it in Anna that that the painter showed? It's the question that cannot be answered. It's that moment when we look at a work of art and say, and that's that, and it's inexplicable. And I mean, tomes, whole libraries have been written about this, and yet we still don't have an answer. What is beauty? Why does beauty affect us so? What is it about beauty that we find so haunting and necessary, but at the same time disturbing and terrifying? We can't define it, no matter how many times we'll write about it. But an artist is a different human being from the rest of us. I can't paint, I can't compose music, I can't sing, I can't dance. The only gift I have is talking, and so I use it to the best of my ability. But when I see beauty, I gasp, and it can be the same reaction to the same object over and over and over again. You probably know that my mom lives in Budapest, and I visit her there often. And like, my favorite thing to do is after dark, just drive across the bridges, just keep driving across the Danube, take every bridge across. And every time I'm in the middle of the bridge, I have the same reaction to the beauty. It just takes your breath away, and it never goes away. And it's that moment of gasping in the presence of something that is essential to us as human beings, and yet it ruins us. we want to go back to that moment over and over again. That's why I'm always on that bridge across the Danube. We want to recapture that moment. And is it good for us? No, it's not good for us. And will we ever stop doing it? No, because we can't. It's inexplicable, and it's undescribable. And through Cheers for Art and Art Be Cursed. Let's see. Nikolai makes so Tolstoy makes Nikolai a full brother, while Sergei is a half brother, suggesting something about the nature of their. Yes, of course. Tolstoy did not have any half brothers, so it's fascinating that he makes Kuznetsov to be. Yeah, he needed a foil for Levin, right? So it's amazing to what extent Kuznetsov socially is a lot closer to Levin, because Levin maintains his position, of Russian aristocratic circles. I mean, he is a born country bumpkin. He wants to sit in his estate and, not wear French suit and not come. I mean, I'm sorry, but book 7 chapters are excruciating for me, because Levin has to wear social clothes and go to social meetings. I can't take it anymore. I mean, that baby has to come like right now, and they have to go back to the country, because this will kill Levin. This life will literally kill Levin. But this is the life of Kuznetsov. So Levin is sort of, he's close to Nikolai in a sense, where Nikolai is a renegade from his class, right? And Levin is a renegade from his class without quite jumping off the cliff. So in that sense, Levin admires the fact that his brother Nikolai did not live a lie. He cannot stand the conventions of his class. And I mean, he's a revolutionary anarchist in his views. He feels he is a traitor to his class. And Levin would love to be a traitor to his class. And do you see how complex Levin's observations are at all of these provincial election meetings, where he says that we have a responsibility to the land. We have to live with the land, but not off the land. All of this like capitalist farming that is entering Russia at this point, it's profit oriented, and it does not take into account the fact that the worker of the land lives with the land, not off the land. We cannot expect more of him, because then the whole system will break. 1917 is just around the corner. I mean, Tolstoy is literally like holding this moment in the palm of his hand and looking at it with incredible amount of wisdom, and saying that on the one hand, there are the Kuznetsovs of this world, who are these intellectual philosophers who talk, but they have no solutions. Then there are all of these young progressive farmers like Vronsky who want to implement all of these new methods, but they're so progressive that it'll destroy the system. Then there are the conservatives who are used to the way everything worked just fine during the totally feudal and horrid serfdom, but that was not sustainable. We could not keep people on the land without giving them their freedom. Well, now freedom came, but we have the responsibility to both the land and to this worker who was a part of the land. And so he's saying, like, the best way to farm is without profit. Everything you need is there, but you don't have to go beyond that. And so that is Levin, and that is a revolutionary thing to say. So Levin is so much like Nikolai, who feels that he needed to leave his own class because his own class was a lie. But Levin is maintaining the social position of his brother Kuznetsov, who is a blowhard. And so the complexity of those brother relationships is stunning. And it's fascinating that Tolstoy gives Levin two brothers. Tolstoy, of course, had three brothers. And there's also a distant sister. Remember, the only reason why Levin ends up at these provincial elections is that he's the manager of his sister's estates. And so the sister is very distant. We don't know much about her, but it's fascinating how Anna Karenina is based on this imaginary sister who was distant at this point in Tolstoy's life because she left her husband, who was an absolute cheat and brute. And she had to live abroad because she had a child out of wedlock, and she could not go back to Russia. So I'm going to reveal to you more about the fate of that sister when the novel is resolved. But we're getting very close. We're getting very close. Yes, but this is just the most complex novel we've covered, and yeah, I just can't wait to do Alexander Dumas again. Like Three Musketeers cannot come soon enough. It's about the same length as Anna Karenina, but Anna Karenina is an impossible novel to comment on. So let me see if there are any more questions. Yes, so that's it. Those were the three questions. Yes, art is complicated, isn't it? So I have jokingly suggested that those of you who really want to know Tolstoy's views about art, please read What is Art? I am not going to offer it as commentary. It is not a page turner. And I would much rather sleep in January and February than comment on art. But I will recommend actually two books that you read during winter break before March 1st when we begin the next reading season. And that's Tolstoy's Confession. And you will recognize the thoughts of characters at the end of Anna Karenina in Tolstoy's Confession and Tolstoy's What is Art, because both of those works, you can see Tolstoy working through the same ideas already in Anna Karenina. Any more questions? Well, we're going to have one more Zoom later this month. We'll try to find time for it because everything is always extremely compressed in December. So we'll try to find time for book 7 and 8 Zoom. Remember, book 8 is the shortest of the novel. It will be quite short. I tried to get ahead and I can't. I just thought, there should be some easy chapters in there. There are no easy chapters in Anna Karenina. When I look at a chapter and think, oh, it's only 3 pages, I think we can get ahead, and we can't. So it's just an endless fight. So more thoughts on Tolstoy and art in our book 7 and 8 Zoom. Like commentary on Tolstoy's ideas about Wagner and Liszt and total art and pre-Raphaelites and naturalist novelistic art in Second Empire France. Oh, just makes your head hurt. But he manages to put all of that into conversations between characters. And so superb novel, and a novel that is just impossible. And please remember, Tolstoy will not write true art after he finishes Anna Karenina. Everything that he will write after this will be not quite this. You cannot write anything after Anna Karenina. This is it. This is the best novel ever written. But remember, yours truly still prefers War and Peace. there's youth and joy there that will be less and less available as we continue, as we finish Anna Karenina. You can see that things are starting to drain out of this novel, and I dread it. Remember, I never commented on the very end of Madame Bovary because I just could not. I hope I will be able to plow through the end of Anna Karenina, but not good, not good. Well, brace yourselves. We are headed for impact. And so see you in books 7 and 8. And thank you so much.